These days, nearly every company is a technology company, or they better become one soon, even yours. And businesses that embrace this kind of thinking will stand apart, but like everything make or break, a change like this brings new complications, new obstacles, like finding the right talent, and just keeping up with the pace of innovation and customer expectations of quality and speed that are, let's just say, challenging. Build as a service helps organizations clear the hurdles, providing the ability to not only compete, but lead. Built on the as-a-service model, BaaS is your seamless access to the right expertise, working in teams to rapidly create and deliver. Totally flexible, totally scalable, and absolutely predictable. Build as a service is that always ready, instantly available engine that helps you craft custom-built modern software, the software your business runs on, and the products and experiences your customers love, all while harnessing the data that helps you see around corners, so you always know what's coming. You could say that Build as a Service is all about closing the distance between concept and creation, ideation and revolution, now and next. And it'll help you build your future today.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Road to DevOps. My name is Renan Diaz, and I'm a senior architect in the cloud DevOps and security practice at Slalom Build. And I'm going to be one of the co-hosts for this segment. Road to DevOps is a segment within the Build DevOps show where we highlight incredible stories from builders all around the world. And our hope is that some of these stories will help and inspire you to start your career or to make a career transition to DevOps. So to kick things off in this first episode, I'm going to have Ahmar Gordon, which will be my co-host going forward. So you'll see Ahmar in the future episodes. Ahmar has an amazing story that I think it's going to resonate with a lot of college and university students that are trying to get into the industry, or even those who are already in the industry, but they want to make a career transition to DevOps. So let's bring Ahmar to the show now. Hello, Ahmar. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hello, Renan. Good afternoon, man. I just wanted to say thank you for the introduction, and I'm delighted to be here with you today to contribute to this knowledge series. It's an honor to be a part of this pilot episode. And I think this series is going to be so impactful for so many people who view, and especially those who are interested in getting into DevOps, as well as the tech field in general. Yeah.
Definitely, Anna. We're so excited to have you here today. And just to kick things off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and also a fun fact?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So I am a cloud DevOps security architect here at Slalom Build. I've been working professionally in the industry for about 5 years now, and I've been with Slalom for about half that. So you could say I'm playing favorites a little bit there. But I am based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I am born and raised. I've been known to enjoy all the typical Southern things, but in my day-to-day, I like to just wake up and take on tough technical problems. I like figuring out solutions to those kinds of things within a team environment. And so I like bringing a good culture to whatever environment that I'm in. You know, that kindness, that hospitality, I think goes a long way when working within the team. And aside from that, naturally, I enjoy a little healthy competition from time to time. So you can usually catch me where that's going on. But a healthy or a fun fact about me, I am an aspiring professional snowboarder. So you know, when travel gets back to normal, you can probably find me flying across the country and taking on some challenging terrain wherever that may be.
That's so interesting. So I guess we're probably going to see you in the future Olympics then.
That's the goal, man. You know what? Tokyo 2020 or 2022, I should say.
That's awesome. So yeah, in the beginning of the episode, I mentioned that, I think you have an amazing story that I think it's going to resonate with a lot of college and university students that are trying to get into the industry. So why don't you tell us, what actually inspired you to start a career in this industry?
I sort of inadvertently got into DevOps pretty early on in my career. And so I'll sort of start by saying, I guess, my different phases of the journey. I'll start at the beginning and kind of work through my entrance into college and then some of the major events and interactions that I had while I was in school that opened up, I think, some really key doors for me. And then I'll touch on some of the industry experience that I gained after graduating that specifically got me to where I am today. But maybe after that, if there's a little time, we can touch on some of the current events and some of the things that are keeping us interested in the field and a field that really changes almost every day, right? It changes underneath our feet. Sometimes it seems like. So for a little background, I have always been fascinated in tech. I think so. My dad was an electrician, and I think that inspired me to be sort of a curious thinker and kind of tinker around with things. Like I always grew up playing video games. As soon as I had hand-eye coordination, I was taking apart remote controls and messing with the Wi-Fi router and around the house, and basically just driving my mom crazy. And I know she saw this, she'd probably have some comments about that. But I think as I got older and online gaming became a thing, that was like the peak interest for me. I think that was like being at the top of a roller coaster, like before you drop down into the whole ride, because I think two of my favorite things that come together, like really the internet and video games. And so I would listen to people always tell me, you do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And so, I figured why not pursue a career that just allows me to just learn and figure out how to make the games that me and all my friends really enjoyed. We really loved. And so that led me to do a little bit of Google research. And just doing from that little bit of research, I figured out that a bachelor's degree in computer science was pretty much the main way to get into the industry, like the video game industry. And so I think just having that landmark as I was applying to college just made things way smoother. I don't have much insight into, I guess, college admissions process, but I know that being at least able to signify what you want to major in before kind of jumping into things going on campus, I think helps strengthen your application to get in. I think the reality is some people don't figure out what they want to do in life before too late, right? Some people don't know what they want to do until they major in college for a couple years, or maybe just later on in life. And so I think I would recognize my resolve around career path to be a privilege for sure. But anyway, I carry this idea forward into my senior year of high school, and it's time for me to start applying for colleges. And I think, to be completely honest at this point, it kind of seems like most of the people around me, and I guess my teachers included, don't really think that I'm cut out for school. Maybe I'm just too lazy or too much of a jokester to kind of head that direction in life. And I think part of me bought into that train of thought because I was never really a straight A student. I was never valedictorian. I was kind of like a solid B student, sprinkled C minuses, solid C minuses in there a little bit. But when I applied and got accepted to Appalachian State University that's up in Boone, North Carolina, shout out to App State, that was really all the validation that I needed. I think that just goes to show, like morally, you shouldn't let anybody tell you who you are or define you or your future or control what you think or believe, because that defeats a lot of the purpose. Like, as long as you have belief in yourself and as long as you're your own biggest advocate as well as your biggest critic, I think you'll have a mindset that supports a lot of success in life. But anyways, I think specifying my major, played a pretty big contributing role in terms of my success, because it allowed me to get in contact with my soon-to-be professors before I even started my freshman year. Like, for example, I was able to learn about a STEM program going on at the school before I even started in the fall for college. I think the STEM program was a catalyst for what I would say were the major opportunities made available to me throughout my college career, because it's such a phenomenal program. Like, as far as I know, it still exists today, but it was funded by the National Science Foundation, the NSF. And I think the best part of the program was the guy who ran it for us at school. And this is the guy who went above and beyond to work for and apply to get all the grant money from NSF to fund the program. His name is Dr. Tashikori. We called him Dr. T for short, but I think Dr. T changed the course of my life. And I'll talk more about him in a minute. But I guess to kind of jump back into the timeline, I started school and I managed to stumble my way through my freshman year with, I guess, decent grades. And my sophomore year came around, and as I'm moving into my dorm for that year, I get into, I think, one of the more serious conversations that I've had with my mom. And she basically looks at me and goes, "You're going to need to get a job starting this year and start working to pay off some of the tuition expenses and stuff like that." And so you know, younger me just pushes back and makes excuses. And I go, "Look, mom, classes are my full time job, and they're a job in themselves. I don't really have the capacity to work a job and go to class. Like, I think that would just be setting me up for failure." And she looks back at me and goes, um, "Yeah, if you don't get a job, we're going to be rethinking this whole college thing." And well, I couldn't really argue with that logic because, mom is always right. And well, my mom had a way of setting expectations pretty clearly with us. And when she did it, well, she did it in a way that gave you a little bit of an extra push. So I made it my mission to land a job on campus, and I tried to make it so that having a job on campus would make things as manageable as possible for me in my life at the time, just for not having a car or anything like that on campus. So so we get back into my routine, going through the STEM program meetings. We had general body meetings at the beginning of every semester, and at this banquet, right there is everybody's back, everybody's coming in from the summer. We've got all this pizza and breadsticks. Everybody's just eating away, and I'm sitting in this lecture hall, and Dr. T walks by me, and I figure, why not take a stab at asking Dr. T to kind of address what's on my mind. And I'm thinking, well, Dr. T is pretty smart. He solves problems for a living. Maybe he can help me. So I go, "Hey, Dr. T, like, you know about any jobs that I could possibly get on campus that also have a decent pay?" And he looks me straight in the eye and just goes like, "Yeah, you know what? Show up in my office at 9:15 on Monday morning, and I'll have something for you. We can work it out." And he just walks away. Like, he just walks straight away from me at that point. And I'm just like, "What just happened?" Like,
You know
well,
what
I'm in
happened, right?
like, it just doesn't make it. Like, I'm like, there's no way it could actually be that easy. I feel like that's a lesson to learn in life here as well. Like, don't ever be afraid to ask for what you want. And I think that mainly just goes for me, like people who are shy. And as a kid, you know, I was always like that. I was always just kind of shy. And I think I could probably just talk about, taking all the shots, or you miss all the shots that you don't take, and stuff like that. But I think you get the picture. That's kind of the moral of of that story. But I take Dr. T up on the offer. I show up to his office, not quite at 9:15, more like 9:52. And when I get there, he looks up at me and he goes, "Wow, like, I didn't think you were coming. I'm glad you made it." And I go like, "Yep, let's do it." He looks at me and goes, "Okay, your job is pretty simple. All you have to do is two things. The first thing is, you're going to be a lab manager for our system administrator. Our administrator owns the computer lab, kind of manages it, and he doesn't have time to open it every morning. So you're going to open it at 9 a.m. every morning. Here's the key. Don't be late. We've had people mess this up before. Take it seriously. We'll be fine." And so I'm like, "Cool, I can do that. I think I got it. I'm good." And the second thing is, I get to show up and work with Dr. T kind of like in his office, like in the vicinity of him, and write code for him specifically. So Dr. T actually had his own side project going on. He was a owner of many beehives. And if you know anything about honeybees, there are a good few issues going on around the world with honeybees. I think honeybees are responsible for like a third or so of the world's food, some fact like that. And so there is a disorder with honeybees. I think it's called colony collapse disorder. And Dr. T was researching it in his side project. And so one of the programs that I built for him or helped build for him was a beehive monitoring system for for the actual beehives, and this would just run on like a Raspberry Pi or some microcontroller, and it would have a camera and a temperature, humidity sensor, and a microphone, and we would just analyze the data. We would record the video and audio, and then upload it to one of our servers, and we could kind of analyze it. And I worked on that for a good year and a half, about 2 years, and I get all the way to my senior year of college now, and it's time to start applying for jobs, real jobs, actual industry jobs. And our annual career fair comes around at the school. So, of course, I go to the career fair and I make my way across the table. I do the rounds, and I end up running into a recruiter from Lowe's Corporate. Lowe's Home Improvement is a pretty big Fortune 40 company here in the States. And so when I get here, I'm a little intimidated because I'm thinking, wow, like this is big time. This is a real Lowe's. And I meet a guy named Kelly Swaim, and he's my interviewer. He tells me, we start talking, and it turns out he just offers me the opportunity to interview, and he gives me time slots. He gives me my time slots for when I want to interview. He says that he has 8 in the morning and 4 p.m. And so I take my pick and I go, you know what? Let's do 4 p.m. because 8 in the morning is a little bit early. I don't know about that. And he goes, look, if you take 4:30, you're gonna have to bring it because nobody was wanting to stick around till 4 p.m. to do much more for that day. So he's gonna be tired. I'm like, okay, you know what? Yeah, let's go with the 8 a.m.
That's the last interview, right? The day.
Absolutely. I'm just
that could be a lot of pressure.
I'll be first and last. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I take on the interview, but I think the cool thing about this is that Dr. T is recognized by Lowe's and as a company. He's a Lowe's distinguished professor. So what I didn't know behind the scenes is that he and Kelly talked about me behind the scenes. I think they caught up after the career fair, and Kelly goes to Dr. T, and he kind of tells me, what did you think about Ahmar? He's seems like a more reserved guy. Maybe he's got his head on his shoulders, but I don't know what you see in him specifically. Could you tell me? And Dr. T, from what he told me, he goes, you know what? That is Ahmar Gordon. Like that is just who he is. And then he goes on to tell him all the things about me and what he knows about me and the things that he likes. And I never got those. Dr. T, when he told me this, he omitted those details. I don't think I'll ever find out what exactly he said to Kelly. But all I know is I got the job. I think the interview went relatively well, but I think Dr. T really made a way for me, and he really vouched for me in that way. And so I got that kickstart at a great company at the beginning of my career, and I'm super thankful for that.
I've got one thing to say. I really wish Dr. T is actually watching this episode.
Dr. T, if you're watching, shout out to you, man.
Because I can see he played such an important role in the start of your career, right? So that's super cool. So talking more specifically about this first experience with Lowe's, was that your first job? Did you start with DevOps straight away, or you did something like app development and so on, and then you moved to DevOps? How was that initial journey for you?
Man, I think starting at Lowe's was extremely awkward for me at first because as I got into the regular stream of work, some of the beginning tasks that I pretty quickly realized nothing that I'm doing here is actually stuff that I learned in school. So that was a reality that hit me in the face pretty quickly. But I started out doing just pretty pure development work. Actually, I was just writing some JavaScript, writing some Python, little Java, And the thing about it was that we had a small team, so we were essentially having to write a lot of our own DevOpsy stuff, all of our own pipelines and stuff like that, um, on our own. So we were the developers and the DevOps, and sometimes the ops at the same time. And so getting into that really pushed me towards, I think, a DevOps mindset, like a kind of a forward mindset, because I started diving into Jenkins jobs and writing builds for that, reproducible jobs, infrastructure as code. Some of those real core DevOps principles that I think I'm still using to this day. And without that environment, I think being forced through that experience to learn DevOps on my own, uh, I don't think there's any way I would be where I am now.
Yeah, and I think I've heard this from a lot of people as well, that especially those that hear about the DevOps industry and so on, and they say, well, but university I don't actually learn anything. So what would be your advice for them, for those who want to get into DevOps but they don't actually, they're not being prepared in university, basically, right?
Yeah. What I would say is, so for one, if you know anyone, right? Like if you have any friends that uh, are in the industry and can tell you a little bit about it, that would be your best bet, because those kinds of people can fill you in on what's actually going on and kind of demystify what the tools actually encompass, right? Like what's actually going on. And then I think more and more universities are offering an expanded set of coursework, right? There are DevOps electives, I think, offered now in some universities. And so we're getting to the point where it's becoming more popular. But again, your own research is super important there. And that just is going to come from capitalizing on every opportunity. I think at Slalom, we go around and we do a good bit of community engagement. And we've been to universities to share some of our own DevOps workshops and kind of our own pitch at why DevOps is a good thing. And so I think when opportunities like that arise, as a student, just be a sponge, soak up as much information as you can, and I think you'll see good things happen.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it happens to a lot of people as well, that not necessarily they get their first job in DevOps. They might get into like app development, software development, and so on, and then they naturally transition, right? Which is what happened to myself, which is what happened to you as well. And so I think that's a very common path in the industry, right? So to do the switch after you get into it as a software developer, for example.
That's awesome. I actually didn't know that you were a developer in a previous life.
Yeah, I
That's
used to
fun
be a
too.
front end, back end, iOS developer as well.
Do you ever miss it?
Not so much, I would say. I think I'm okay with the infrastructure side of things, right? Before I had some kind of bad experiences when I was a developer, and I think that's what pushed me to more to the infrastructure side. And so I don't think I don't think I see myself going back. But how about you? Would you go back?
Oh man, every now and then I love DevOps. I'll say that. But every now and then when I'm in a room with the team and I hear developers working on certain problems, I'm just like, man, you guys are kind of making me miss the days where I would crank out some code, crank out some algorithms, and it's just like,
Yeah,
man. But
that part
I
I
can't.
miss.
Yeah,
No,
like
but
the
yeah,
problems.
that part, yeah, the problem solving, exactly. Yeah, when you have to come up with that, algorithm that, to solve that problem, and that adrenaline of,
Getting
that's
your code
something
to
I miss.
compile. Yeah, it's so awesome. But
Exactly.
now DevOps is just such a fast growing field. Another thing that I like better about DevOps, and I think it's a comparison in culture between software engineering and DevOps, is that so software engineering, you can ask someone what they do, and there's a variety of answers, right? They're gonna go and tell you, oh, I write Python, oh, I write C sharp, oh, I write JavaScript. And it's really something that you have to follow up with a clarifying question. But if I go and ask a DevOps engineer what they do, it's a pretty straightforward answer. And I can right off the bat just get into a conversation with the confidence that we're going to be on the same page. We kind of know what tools each other are using, and I can immediately just start riling off a bunch of terminology, and they're going to get it. But I like that DevOps engineering is kind of revolves around a core set of principles, no matter where you are. And where software engineering, there can be so many different flavors. You can kind of get lost in the weeds a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think one question I had as well for you, and you were talking about the culture. So a lot of people think of DevOps as, so culture is one aspect of DevOps, right? But some people might think that there's only one type of culture that an organization has to have in order to do DevOps. So, but I know that you've worked for different organizations, and have you seen this culture aspect changing, among these organizations, even though they were all doing DevOps? How's the scenario in the industry?
Oh, no, absolutely. So I think I've seen DevOps change across jobs quite a bit drastically. In my first job, I saw DevOps applied as more of an afterthought instead of what it should be, which is integrated into every part of the software development lifecycle. It was a bit of a struggle because it was a newer thing, right? I'm thinking big corporate, some of the more rigid processes. DevOps is more of a new age thing. So it was a tough adoption to make, and we constantly had to make the case for why we needed this and how it's valuable to the company. So it was a tough spot there, even though we knew we were doing the right thing. But as I got on to my next position, which ended up being a consulting job, my first consulting job, it was understood, right? We actually had a department for DevOps specifically, and that was just from the initialization of the company, and so that was a much better environment to work in. We got to inject all of our DevOps practices and principles into planning phases of you thinking about sprints and Scrum Agile life cycles and right into the testing frameworks that we used, right into production deployment. So it was good, but still, we had separated at that point in time DevOps from our cloud practices as well. So, it was a bit of a struggle to work within DevOps pipelines without being fully integrated with our cloud provider as well. So now on to current day Slalom, things are perfect because our capability is a merge of cloud, DevOps, and security. We have all three of those areas as our core principle, as our core focus. And so having that as a single package has been the best environment for DevOps that I've seen. I think it is really the ideal way to practice. And I think since everybody is on the same page about what we're doing, we can just get so much more work done. It's really fun.
The last question that I had before we get into a little game is, we always hear about the DevOps engineer. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you the real meaning of that. Like, what do you think that actually means? Do you think there should be a single DevOps engineer? Do you think it's more of a culture thing that involves, teams of different departments? How do you see the role of a DevOps engineer in an organization?
No, that's a fantastic question, and I think it doesn't get discussed enough, right? I think there's too much misinterpretation around what a DevOps engineer's role is within a team or at larger within a company, right? I think that just because you're a DevOps engineer or you have a DevOps engineer on the team doesn't mean that nobody else does DevOps, right? Like a DevOps engineer's job is to essentially provide better functionality, better workflows, and better knowledge continuation throughout the entire team, right? So it's not that developers can't do some of the DevOps work, right? Developers should be writing some of the pipelines, right? And it's not that some of your system administrators and ops guys can't get involved in looking at things like pull requests when you're managing source control, right? I think DevOps spans across multiple teams, right? The testers need to be involved in writing pipelines. Developers need to be aware of what's going on in your CI/CD tools, and ops managers or system administrators need to be involved in the code as well, because as we get into a day and age where infrastructure as code is way more popular than it was before, um, system administrators are finding that they have to write more and more code, and DevOps engineers are the bridge into that world, right? So now roles are expanding, and DevOps engineers are the connector, right? They're the main centerpiece to bring all aspects of or all capabilities of the team together into one.
Yeah, that's a very important aspect as well, because I think, for application developers, it's not that they're not doing DevOps. A lot of them are, but they just don't notice, right? So if you have an application developer communicating with the, let's say, operations teams or infrastructure teams, or even the security team, right, to make sure that you have application security integrated in your code, you're already doing DevOps if you think about it, right? But I think what we're saying here mostly is that part of automating everything, creating the pipelines, doing the monitoring or the infrastructure, which is what we mostly focus on our practice at Slalom Build. But yeah, I guess just to clarify that if you're an application developer or if you're a security engineer or whatever it is, that doesn't mean that you can't do DevOps, right? As long as you're communicating within all the teams, you're actually doing it.
100%. Yeah, I think so. You said it better than I could. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, and so to finish things up here on the episode, I've got a little game for you. Are you up for it?
Yeah. You know, I love games, so
Yeah.
I am excited to see what we've got here.
All right, so we're gonna have the wheel of DevOps coming right up. All right, so this is our little game. And so basically there are 10 questions here. I'm going to spin the wheel and you have 2 skips. So if you're not okay with a question, you don't want to answer, then that's okay. We'll spin it again. Sounds good?
Perfect. You know how much I
All
love
right,
games. I'm ready to
let's
see
do
it.
All right, let's see our first question. Oh, nearly what is DevOps? All right, so that's your question. So do you think that programming is a crucial skill to succeed in DevOps?
Yes. I think this is an awesome question, and I'm admittedly a little bit biased in my answer for it because I do have a developer background. I was a software developer before I was a DevOps engineer, and I think that we can pull a lot of the same cultural practices and design patterns from programming skills. I wouldn't say it's necessarily as crucial to know exactly any specific programming language. I don't want to set the expectation that people should zero in on Python or Java or any C sharp, any particular language. I would say it's more about the best practices that go into the type of work that programmers and developers do on a daily basis. So we're talking about doing the basic things like commenting your code and making sure that version control is organized and PRs are written with good messages, right? Good commit messages, and essentially, I would say if I had to say yes or no, I would say yes because
Mhm.
while it's not just the skill itself, it is more about all of the things that come around the skill, right? The cultural environment that you're piecing together to form the DevOps culture. So,
Right. Yeah,
what do you
and I
think?
think especially if you work with infrastructure as code and so on, I think nowadays we see a lot of pattern where we have Lambda functions or cloud functions being utilized for automation, right? And that involves programming languages. And also, if you work with technology like Terraform or CloudFormation and so on, now there is the Cloud Development Kit, which involves using a programming language to generate a template to manage infrastructure. So yeah, so that could be like a huge difference, right, in your day-to-day work.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Ready for the next one?
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm going to remove this one. Let's spin it again. Oh,
All right.
What is DevSecOps? You want to skip
So
or you want to
that
answer?
is going to take me all day to describe. So let's go ahead and skip that one.
Skip that one. Awesome. All right, let's go to the next. All right. So, what skills have you learned which helped you succeed in your role?
I think the skills that have helped me most to succeed in my role are more of the soft skills. I think the first big one is to really, borrow off of the golden rule, which is treat everybody the same way that you would also want yourself to be treated. Um, when I was throughout, I think throughout the course of my career, both college and professional, all of my role models that I leveraged for help on a day to day basis were understanding and they were transparent with me no matter how stupid my question was or how intellectually stimulating my question was. I got the same treatment. I got the exact same response and the exact same assistance, the same help. So I carry that forward in my day-to-day role as well. And it's all about helping people. It's all about just
Yeah.
meeting people where they are. And we have to work as a team at the end of the day. And that's how you achieve, I think, the best possible results. The other thing that I think is super important is learning how to fail and learning how to learn from your failures too. I
Mhm.
think failure is I think learning how to fail is a skill because naturally we humans don't like it, right? We naturally resist the feeling that we get when we fail. But learning how to process it, take what happened, analyze it and iterate on it for the next time so that you can be better essentially opens up the growth opportunity for you, the growth potential and allows you to achieve the greater purpose that I think uh, everyone is destined to achieve.
Man, that was a great answer. You nailed it. I love
Thank
that.
you.
All right. So, last question. You ready for it?
Yeah, man. Let's
Let's
do
do
it.
it. Oh, that's a big one. All right. So, if you had to give an advice to your younger self about working in tech, what would that be?
Man. I I was I would try not to be I would try not to expose how jaded the world really is to my younger self to at least give myself a chance. But I think the real answer that I would give myself is um and I'm going down the rabbit hole for sure, but it's based off of the last answer that I just gave. It's more about realizing that it's not all pretty, right? When I was younger, I thought that tech was a dreamland. I thought that it could do no wrong to me. But the reality is, it's a real job like every other job in the world. And in order to better deal with that part of life, I think it's best to take a step back and make sure that as you go through real life problems, as you deal with daily struggles, you've got to make sure to talk about it, right? Definitely find someone, whoever it is, whether it's a friend, a family member, a coworker, somebody who you can talk to about your problems and don't just treat them as if they are something that will eventually go away and that you can bury. You can actually set yourself up for a lot harder of a time later in life if you are just holding your problems to yourself. So I would give myself a little bit more generic advice because I think working in tech is not necessarily a silo. I don't think it's necessarily a unique case when it comes to some of the greatest problems that you can experience.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ahmar, for for all of your answers, all of your sharing your stories as well. I think that's gonna make a huge difference in the lives of so many people, and that's what we're here for, right? So yeah, so thank you again for doing that. And just to close things off, so I just wanted to ask, how can people reach out to you if they wanna chat with you? How they can where they can find you?
Absolutely. If you want to reach out to me about slalom, how to get involved, potential career opportunities, or you want to just talk about DevOps or any general question, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. Search my name, should come up, and I'll be happy to talk to anyone who wants to learn more.
And also, if you want to be notified whenever we have another episode coming up or another event coming up, workshop and so on, so just go to meetup.com/build DevOps and join our group. So again, thank you very much, Ahmar, for joining us today,
Thank you,
and
Renan.
we hope to see you in a future episode.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the time.
All right, take care. Bye.